Imagine you wake up one morning and everything you own is gone. No clothes hanging in the closet, no shelf full of gadgets, no car keys, no streaming subscriptions, no clutter, no chaos. Just a mattress, a journal, and your breath. Most people would panic, but you don't. You walk to the window, open it, and breathe deeper than you ever have. For the first time in your life, you're not being pulled in 100 directions. For the first time, you feel weightless. That's the moment you realize, sometimes losing everything is what sets you free. What if the life you're trying to build isn't hidden beneath what you don't have, but buried under everything you do?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We live in a world designed to keep us consuming. Not because we need more, but because we've been trained to believe that without more, we're not enough. But what if that's the lie? What if the truth is, the less you own, the more you are? We're told to accumulate, to store, to collect, to expand. But the greatest minds throughout history have said the opposite. Socrates declared, "The secret of happiness, you see, is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less." Let that hit you. Not enjoy more, enjoy less. This isn't minimalism as a trend. This is minimalism as freedom. The first massive benefit of owning less is mental clarity. Every object in your space is a thought. It holds energy. It pulls at your attention. Even when you're not consciously focused on it, it's there demanding storage, cleaning, organizing, remembering. The mind becomes a battlefield of micro-decisions and distractions. But when you remove the excess, your mind breathes. Suddenly, you can think, you can focus, you can feel. And that opens the door to creativity, peace, and deep work. Think of your brain like a room. If it's filled with noise and clutter, how can you hear your own soul speak? But here's where it gets deeper. Owning less forces you to confront your attachments. Every item you let go of brings up a question. Why did I hold on to this? Was it fear? Nostalgia? Insecurity? Status? When you let go of the object, you're not just clearing space, you're deconstructing ego. You're peeling back the layers of false identity. Suddenly, you realize that the shoes you wore to impress strangers never made you feel whole. That the expensive watch was just armor. That the books you never read were trophies, not tools. This is not decluttering. This is awakening. And when we awaken, we become dangerous in the best way. We become unshakable. Because the second massive benefit of owning less is freedom from control. Every item you own owns a piece of you. Think about it. The more you have, the more you have to clean, insure, maintain, move, charge, store, protect. Your possessions become little masters. And you, their servant. But when you cut the cord, when you release the unnecessary, you become sovereign again. You move through life lighter, faster, more agile. You can pack your life into a bag and be on a plane in an hour. You're not tied to a mortgage, to a garage full of junk, to a closet full of clothes you don't love. You're free. This is where the old Stoic wisdom hits hard. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The rich man isn't the one with the most things. It's the one who needs the least. Imagine if your happiness wasn't tied to anything outside of you. Not a car, not a house, not even a phone. Imagine if your joy came from being fully alive, not fully stocked. That's not fantasy, that's power. And it's available the moment you choose to let go. So here's a question that might shake you. Who would you be if everything was taken away? Not as a loss, but as a liberation. If your identity wasn't built on what you owned, but on what you embodied, would you still be confident? Would you still feel valuable? Would you still know who you are? Most people don't, because we've been taught to build our self-worth on external layers. But when those layers fall, the real self is revealed. And that's the third massive benefit of owning less. You meet your essence. Without the distractions and noise, you begin to rediscover what you actually love, what you actually enjoy, what actually moves you. Not what you were told to want, not what your friends have, not what society told you is success, but what makes your soul burn. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's walking through forests, maybe it's building things with your hands, maybe it's just being present with people you care about. Owning less gives you back the space to remember. And in that remembering, you become whole again. But this isn't easy. Letting go is hard, because owning things provides an illusion of control. It gives us a narrative. I own this, therefore I am this. But as Nietzsche said, he who possesses little is so much the less possessed. That's the paradox. The more you let go, the more you return. And the more you return, the less you need to prove. That's the fourth massive benefit: confidence without performance. When you no longer need to dress a certain way to feel worthy, when you no longer need to drive a certain car to feel successful, when you no longer need a specific apartment to feel valid, you become unstoppable. Because you are finally operating from within. And that inner clarity creates outer power. You walk into rooms differently. You speak less. You listen more. You choose your words with intention because you're not trying to impress. You're trying to impact. And when you start impacting, you start attracting not just opportunities, but people. Real people. People who see you, not your stuff. People who feel your energy, not your image. People who resonate with your truth, not your title. This leads to the fifth massive benefit: authentic relationships. When you own less, your identity becomes clearer. Your time becomes more intentional. Your presence becomes more real. And the people who align with that stay. The ones who don't fall away, which is exactly what you want. Because truth doesn't attract everyone. It attracts the right ones. But let's go even further. When you own less, you also consume less. And this brings us to the sixth massive benefit: financial freedom. Most people are broke not because they don't earn enough, but because they spend to fill emotional holes. They shop to feel alive. They buy to avoid pain. They consume to escape. But when you own less, you don't need to escape. You're already home. You become intentional with every dollar. You save more. You invest smarter. And eventually your money works for you. Because you've stopped trying to keep up and started building up. And finally, the seventh massive benefit, the one that almost no one talks about, is this: you align with nature. Think about the universe. It doesn't hoard. It flows. It sheds. It evolves. Trees drop their leaves. Animals migrate with only what they need. Rivers don't store, they move. But we cling. We stockpile. We store fear in closets and anxiety in basements. But when we let go, when we own less, we return to the rhythm of life itself. And in that rhythm, we find peace. Here's the final question I want you to hold. What if everything you're searching for already exists in the space you refuse to create? What if clarity, freedom, confidence, love, wealth, and peace are not things you earn by acquiring, but gifts you unlock by releasing? We're not just talking about stuff anymore. We're talking about your life force, your time, your energy, your attention. These are the real currencies of freedom, and every item you own makes a withdrawal. The more things you have, the more scattered your being becomes. It's not just about minimalism in aesthetics. It's about maximalism in meaning. When you own less, you feel more. You notice more. You become more. You're no longer outsourcing your identity to objects. You're reclaiming it from within. Let's go deeper into mental clarity. When you own less, your environment starts to reflect your inner life. And when your space is clean, simple, and intentional, your thoughts follow. You wake up in a room that isn't screaming for your attention. No stacks of unread books silently judging you. No clutter reminding you of 100 unfinished projects. Just presence, just breath, just now. This clarity leads to decisiveness. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You know what matters because you've removed everything that doesn't. And this sparks something powerful, momentum. When you're not constantly managing stuff, you start managing your destiny. You reclaim hours every week. You move through your day with rhythm instead of resistance. You stop getting sidetracked by the 1,000 micro decisions caused by excess. You stop wrestling with overwhelm. Your bandwidth returns, and you start creating instead of reacting. This is how breakthroughs happen, not in chaos, but in calm. Not in noise, but in space. And don't for a second think this is about deprivation. It's about liberation. Owning less doesn't mean you lack. It means everything you own is aligned. It means every item has a purpose, a story, a connection. Your clothes reflect your essence. Your tools serve your craft. Your space supports your peace. You're not just surviving in your environment, you're thriving in it. Because it's not filled with distractions. It's filled with intention. Now let's revisit the idea of control. When we let go of physical possessions, we let go of psychological attachments. That old jacket from high school? Maybe it's not just fabric. Maybe it's a story you're afraid to release. That expensive piece of tech. Maybe it's not just a tool. Maybe it's your way of proving you're successful. But what happens when you no longer need objects to speak for you? You start speaking with your life. And that's when you step into a rare kind of power, the kind that doesn't shout, but radiates. This leads us to one of the most overlooked benefits, silence. Yes, silence. Because when your environment is stripped of noise, your mind follows. And in that silence, you hear things you've never heard before. The sound of your breath, the rhythm of your thoughts, the whisper of your intuition. Most people live their entire lives deaf to their own soul because they've never created the silence required to hear it. But owning less is a portal to that silence. It's the gateway to alignment. And alignment is everything. When your external world matches your internal values, life becomes effortless. You stop fighting yourself. You stop compromising. You stop living two lives, the one you dream of and the one you tolerate. Instead, you merge them. You live with congruence. And congruence is where joy lives. It's where peace begins. It's where truth resides. Let's talk about sleep. You might not think owning less affects your sleep, but it does. A cluttered room creates a cluttered nervous system. Your body never fully relaxes in chaos. It's always on alert. But when your room is clean, simple, and spacious, your sleep deepens. Your body knows it's safe. Your mind knows it can rest. And rest isn't a luxury. It's your foundation. It's how your brain repairs. It's how your spirit resets. Owning less creates the conditions for deep rest. And when you're rested, you become more present. And presence is the currency of connection. You start showing up in conversations differently. You listen more. You speak with intention. You're not distracted by your to-do list or the mess at home. You're here, fully, and people feel that. Your relationships deepen. Your love becomes more generous. Your presence becomes a gift. And it all starts with owning less. Because owning less gives you back to yourself. Now let's talk about ambition. Some people fear that owning less will kill their drive. But that's a myth. In fact, owning less sharpens your drive. It removes the noise. It eliminates the fake goals. It reveals what you actually want. And when you're clear on your real desires, not the ones marketed to you, but the ones that come from your soul, you become unstoppable. Your ambition becomes sacred, not hustle for the sake of hustle, but movement with meaning. And when you move with meaning, you move with peace, because you're not chasing shadows. You're not running from emptiness. You're not seeking wholeness through consumption. You've already found it inside. And that inner peace becomes your superpower. It grounds you, it protects you, it guides you. And it can't be bought. It can only be uncovered through the shedding of the unnecessary. Let's look at this from a spiritual lens. Every wisdom tradition speaks of simplicity. The Buddha left his palace. Jesus wandered the desert. Lao Tzu disappeared into the mountains. Why? Because truth doesn't live in accumulation. It lives in presence, and presence requires space, a physical space, mental space, emotional space. When you own less, you create that space. You become available for truth to enter. You become a vessel, empty enough to receive, still enough to perceive. Now here's something few talk about. Owning less makes you more generous. Why? Because when you're no longer clinging to your own excess, you become open to giving. You stop hoarding. You start sharing. Not just things, but energy, time, attention, love. Generosity flows naturally when scarcity ends. And scarcity ends the moment you realize you already have enough. But let's not sugarcoat it. Letting go is painful. It brings up grief, doubt, Identity crises. You'll feel like you're losing pieces of yourself. And in a way, you are. But those pieces were never you. They were roles, masks, stories, illusions. And when they fall, something else rises you without the extras. You in your raw, wild, untamed truth. So let me ask you something bold. What if the next level of your life isn't about getting more, but about becoming less? Less distracted, less cluttered, less reactive, less attached. What would that version of you look like? How would they move, speak, create, love? Love. This is the part where everything changes. Because now we're not just talking about material objects, we're talking about your soul. We're talking about the invisible weight you carry every day, the emotional clutter, the spiritual debris, the mental baggage that's been dragging behind you for years. And here's the truth most people never realize. Owning less outside creates a vacuum inside. And nature doesn't tolerate vacuums. It fills that space with something else, truth. When you strip away what you don't need, life begins to reveal what you do. Maybe you realize you don't need 40 pairs of shoes. You just need to walk more. Maybe you realize you don't need 5 streaming subscriptions. You need silence. Maybe you realize you don't need the latest phone. You need to call your parents. This is the hidden math of owning less. It doesn't subtract, it multiplies. It multiplies meaning. It multiplies depth. It multiplies presence. And we live in a world starving for all three. Let's talk about focus. In a cluttered environment, your attention is fragmented. You check your phone, then your notifications, then a half-read book, then your email, then back to your phone, and the cycle repeats. But when you remove the unnecessary, you reclaim your ability to attend, to go deep, to sit with one thing until it reveals its truth. That's what Cal Newport calls deep work, and it's impossible in a life filled with distraction. Owning less is the precondition for depth, and depth is where the magic is. Shallow people chase everything. Deep people master one thing. They go narrow, but they go all the way. They don't multitask their purpose. They don't dilute their passion. They concentrate. And that concentration becomes magnetism. People feel it. They trust it. They follow it. Because in a world of scattered energy, focused energy is sacred. Now let's go even further. When you own less, you begin to slow down. And in slowing down, you start to see not just the world around you, but the world within you. You notice your breath. You notice your thoughts. You notice your habits. And that noticing is the beginning of transformation. Because you can't change what you don't see. And you can't see what's buried under layers of chaos. Owning less is how you begin to see clear. And clarity is your ultimate leverage. With clarity, decisions become easy. You stop guessing. You stop second guessing. You know what's a yes. You know what's a no. You know what aligns. You know what drains. And you stop compromising. Because when you're clear, you don't need to be convinced. You move with conviction. You speak with precision. You live with direction. That's not just personal power. That's spiritual power. But owning less also creates a profound shift in your relationship with time. When your life is simplified, time starts to stretch. Mornings feel spacious. Meals feel sacred. Conversations feel full. You stop rushing. You stop skipping over moments. You stop living in fast forward. And you begin to live in now. And now is the only place joy exists. The past is memory. The future is fantasy. But now is alive. And when you own less, you live more now. Let's pause and ask something deep. What if time isn't what you're lacking? What if it's your attention that's scattered? Because when you own less, your attention returns. And where your attention goes, your life grows. Attention is the seed of all creation. And owning less is how you protect that seed from being trampled by the noise of the world. Here's another truth most people never uncover. Owning less makes you more resilient. Why? Because when you're not dependent on your environment for emotional stability, you become unbreakable. You stop needing your house to be perfect, your clothes to impress, your possessions to define you. You can be dropped into any situation and you carry your peace with you. That's real strength. That's what Viktor Frankl meant when he said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Owning less teaches you that power. And let's talk about legacy. When you own less, you live more intentionally. You stop wasting time. You stop chasing status. You start asking better questions. What impact do I want to leave? Who do I want to become? What am I building that will outlive me? You start living for something bigger than yourself. And you realize that your legacy isn't what you owned, it's who you became. It's not your stuff that people remember. It's your energy. So ask yourself, if someone walked into your home right now, would they learn something about your values? Or would they just see more of the same? Your space is a mirror. Does it reflect your truth? Or does it reflect your fear? Owning less forces you to answer that. And the answer changes your life. The truth is, owning less is not about having an empty house. It's about living a full life. Full of meaning, full of purpose, full of presence. You don't need to move to the mountains. You don't need to throw everything away. You just need to ask one question every day. Does this support the life I want? If not, let it go. Let it go with gratitude. Let it go with love. Let it go with peace. And in that letting go, something extraordinary happens. You get lighter. You get clearer. You get you. The real you. The one who's been buried under layers of stuff, stories, and expectations. The one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who doesn't need more. The one who is already enough. That's the final, hidden benefit of owning less. You come home to yourself. You don't escape the world. You re-enter it with depth, clarity, and purpose. You stop chasing. You start creating. You stop consuming. You start being.